Good morning, friends, and welcome to Wake Up in the Word. Once again, we're in the book of Exodus, chapter 20, looking at the Ten Commandments. Come join me. We're going to look at another one this morning. Yesterday, we looked at one that only had 3 words in the verse. Today, we're going to look at 4 words in Exodus chapter 20 and verse number 14. It simply says, "Do not commit adultery." Do not commit adultery. I know the world has thrown this one in the trash, haven't they? It's almost like sexual sin is a sport. You can let her in high school now. It seems like we have forgotten this commandment and to our own peril. It messes up relationships, families. It makes us forget that the relationship of a man and a woman in a marital bond is sacred according to God. And if we neglect that and we decide we're going to make it something else, we diminish our society, we break relationships, we break hearts, and we break the next generation. Well, it's something that our founding fathers recognized, and in our little booklet that we're handing out from the Family Research Council, it talks about this seventh commandment in a very unusual way. It says this commandment is all about keeping commitments. Now, when the nation of Israel continually broke the covenant that God made with them at Sinai and began to worship idols, he compared that to adultery. As a symbolic act, God told the prophet Hosea, "Go, take to yourself an adulterous wife and children of unfaithfulness, because the land is guilty of the vilest adultery in departing from the Lord." That's from Hosea 1:2. However, God is a covenant keeping God who expects covenants to be kept between every man and woman who marries. Now, numerous colonial laws cited the seventh commandment. The reason is that the health of the family has a direct bearing on the health of culture and society, and especially has a deep impact on the children who are the future. With that thought in mind, it seems that we would, as a country, as any culture, raise the level of expectation for those covenants we have, like marriage, because it makes a healthy society. It makes one that really lasts. Now, yesterday, I showed you a picture that was from our wedding almost 45 years ago. Sue and I made a commitment to each other and to God on November the 5th, 1976. Seems like a long time ago, or it seems like just yesterday. I guess it depends on your perspective. But by the same token, it's a commitment we've been serious about, and we've not broken those vows that we made almost 45 years ago. Now, not everybody can say that, and I'm not putting you down if you've had your issues and you've found yourself in the midst of adultery, whether you've been the victim of it or you've been the cause of it. Regardless of where you are in life right now, there's a chance for all of us to find restoration, forgiveness with God. Don't let the past haunt you. Satan would want to hold that over your head. What are you doing with your life from here on? Are you faithfully keeping the promises that you've made to God and to your partner? Well, listen, as we look at how that's laid out, I want to share with you something that was very special in our wedding ceremony. We memorized part of our vows, including a scripture verse that comes from the book of Ruth. You may have heard this one used before. I want to share it with you in the King James Version, exactly as we memorized it and stated it to each other on our wedding day almost 45 years ago. It comes from Ruth chapter 1, and of course, it's the response of Ruth's choice to remain with her mother in law, Naomi, when the other daughter in law said, "Oh, yeah, I'm going to hightail it back over here to my friends in Moab, and I'm getting away from you." Instead, Ruth had a commitment, one that she kept and that God honored. And these are the words that Sue and I repeated to each other on our wedding day. It's from Ruth 1:16, and it says this: "Entreat me not to leave thee, or to return from following after thee. For whither thou goest, I will go, and where thou lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God my God. Where thou diest, will I die, and there will I be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if aught but death part thee and me." Now, obviously, this was not a wedding vow per se that Ruth was making to her mother in law, but it has the same sentiment. That's why we repeated those lines to each other. You notice I didn't want to trust my memory to say I've got to memorize now, but we memorized that in 1976 and spoke it to each other. Well, my friends, it's one of those commitments that needs to be made and needs to be kept. Have you discovered it's difficult to keep those kind of commitments these days? Jesus put this in unique perspective in the Sermon on the Mount, in a passage that applies to both yesterday's commandment and today's, the sixth and the seventh. He said, when it comes to murder, how does this start? He says, you say, I haven't murdered anybody. I'm doing well. I'm keeping that commandment. But he said, if you've hated someone in your heart, you've wished them dead, it's almost like committing the sin itself. You've committed murder in your heart. Same thing with this commandment about adultery. He said, you say you haven't committed adultery? Yes, but if you, and he's talking to the guys here, he's saying if you've looked at a woman with lust in your heart, you've committed adultery already with her in your heart. What's he pointing out here? All sin begins in the heart, or sometimes we'd say between the ears, it begins in the mind. When you and I take on the thoughts of adultery or murder or any other sin, and we cherish those thoughts, we live them vicariously through perhaps the movies and the TV programs we're watching, or we just relish in our heart the opportunity to reap vengeance on someone and kill them, or to go out and commit adultery with someone, then the more we think about it, the more likely it is that what we have done to our heart will manifest itself in actions. So, friends, as we look at all of these commandments, remember where sin starts. It starts on the inside, it starts with what you think. And as you begin to cleanse your mind of evil thoughts, you're much more likely to live a holy and godly life. But if you let your thought life turn into a garbage heap, don't be surprised if your life doesn't become a pile of trash. Well, friends, thank you for spending a little time with me this morning. Thanks for waking up in the Word with me. We're going to do this again tomorrow as we look at each one of the 10 commandments. Come join me, invite a friend, and let's do this together. Let's understand God's law so that we can see what's best for our lives, our communities, our churches, our countries. God bless you. I'll see you then.